Well, hello there and welcome to the Parenting Show. I'm Jennifer Anderson. Thrilled to have you join us on this new season of the Parenting Show. And joining me as always on the couch, my co-host, parenting expert, Alyson Schaefer.
Good to be back.
Back again. It's
reunited,
and it feels so good.
Yes, it does. It does.
Yep.
Looking forward to the new season.
And we keep getting a little bit closer and a little bit closer.
Thank goodness.
Yes.
We can even touch now.
I know.
How about that?
I know. So for anybody who's joining us for the first time, and we welcome all of our viewers across 3 provinces, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Newfoundland, we love having you join us. But for anybody who's new, we normally sit on this couch, although there were a few Zoom calls that we did over the last couple of years.
We did our pivot through the pandemic too, and we had pandemic-specific topics. If anyone is interested in past episodes, those are still up on our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, but this is a show we figured out last season. We've done, I think we said over 300 shows together. Started in 2006.
Something like that.
There was
when
a
your
year,
kids were little bambinos.
Yep, they were 2 years old, and so we took a little hiatus, and we are back on the air again, and thrilled to be doing these shows about democratic parenting.
Yes, helping parents with their everyday common issues. There are universals that really dog us, and we dig into some specific issues as well. So we've got some new topics coming up across all ages of children, and we answer people's questions.
Well, and this is, well, it's our new season. It's also a new year for school, and so that's what we're talking about today. Top tips for kicking off the school year. This is something we've done before over the years as kids and families get back into the grind and the routine of heading off to school.
So for families in general, and I think that you would agree with me on this, it's like another New Year's, right?
Yes.
There is this feeling of this is the reset, okay? The frivolities and fun of the summer are over, and we make a lot of kind of commitments to ourselves that when we go back to school this year, this family is going to run differently. And so it can be a really stressful time for parents. They're excited about the idea that they can hand their kids off and get some more freedom, but leading up to it in that whole month of September is really chaotic with paperwork and back to school shopping and signing up for teams, and it's a kind of a chaotic time in family life. And every parent thinks they're going to do it better this year. And the tips that I want to give will help throughout the year in terms of organizing your family. But if you're going to do your reset, the first thing I want to point out to parents, my tip number 1 is to just realize part of why you are so chaotic is because very responsible parents take on too much. They do it all. They feel responsible for it all. So they feel like they're pulling out their hair. But responsible parents tend to raise irresponsible children because they don't delegate.
Right.
They actually do too much, and they think that they're doing it in the name of it'll just be faster if I do it myself. If I do it myself, then I know it'll get done, and that'll bring the chaos down in the household. But this need to be controlling about everything really leads to frustration and burnout for parents, and it's ongoing because there's never a good time to hand things off to your kids, so you constantly stay in a state of chaos. The houses that seem to run the most smoothly are the ones where the parent is not overburdened and the parents are working together, and this is why we talk about democratic parenting, but we've appropriately handed off some of these responsibilities to our kids so that the team is all shouldering some of these burdens.
Right.
And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is by slowing down a little bit, having a little bit of upfront work and chaos. So we call this take time for training.
Okay.
It's a basic core principle in democratic family that you should never do for a child something they can do for themselves, and you need to spend time training them. If you're one thing you want to take off your plate is doing laundry, an 8 and 10-year-old can figure out how to do laundry if you spend a few days showing them how to work the dials, how to separate the piles. It's not actually a very complicated machine. And then you got laundry off your plate. Yeah, so it's going to take you a few days to train, but that's one less thing for a parent to do.
So for a lot of families, though, they go into the summer and they're very lax on their routines.
Oh, and we've been, yes, and which is lovely. That's what makes summer nice. You don't have to get up with an alarm.
Right.
You graze through the kitchen. There's no real set meal time. I'll catch you later. It's lovely. It's a nice time of year.
But is there a balance of how much is too much in that relaxation? Should we keep some of that routine in the summer, or should, because when you let all hell break loose,
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, I know that this. Neither do I want a family to run like a drill sergeant with every minute scheduled. I think that is too restrictive.
Okay.
But I will tell you that children and adults thrive on routines. Routines create order and they create expectations, and then that gives kids the benefit of knowing how to function. And when they function well, they don't get yelled at. They don't need to be disciplined. We're happier because we're not having to deal with kids, and it puts it into more automatic behavior. And so, and I learned this not only obviously in my training, becoming a family counselor, but I also worked with school systems. I worked opening nursery schools. I've worked training teachers in their classroom management programs, and you can see that kids do thrive when they come into the classroom because it's very well trained in them. You come in, you put your bag on the hook in your cubby. You go put your little slippers on. You get a puzzle and you go to the puzzle table until we flick the lights, and then everyone comes to circle time. And they know the order of the day, right? And so they learn those patterns, and that makes them feel calm. In fact, interestingly, the most chaotic time for a child is during recess and free play, because there's no structure.
Right.
And that's when a lot of misbehaviors and that's when a lot of stress actually happens for kids, believe it or not. Kids, they love recess, but when you go out there and you don't know how to start a game and you don't know how to talk to a friend and, So the same with home, that if you can figure out how do you get routines and schedules and expectations in place, you're not going to do this all in the first week of September. And parents feel really disappointed, like, oh, why am I failing?
Well, it's the expectation. Right?
It's parents' expectation.
Yes.
So I'm telling parents the realistic expectation is it's probably going to take you all the way up to Thanksgiving to get your house in order and running smoothly, because you're going to be doing a lot of this take time for training that I'm talking about. And it all begins with the family meeting. So anyone who's a regular viewer knows that I'm very keen on family meetings. If you're new to let me just tell you very briefly, and again, you can go back and watch past episodes where we've really dug into the nuts and bolts of how to do it.
Family meetings.
But the idea of the family meeting is, in a democratic family, we have to come together, and every stakeholder in the family needs to participate in the agreements and the decision making in an age-appropriate way. So, I'm not going to sit down with my 6-year-old and say, you're part of the family, the mortgage is coming up for renewal. Do we go fixed rate or variable? It's ridiculous. But I can say, we're having trouble organizing the front hallway. How can we keep it better tidied? And ask for input. A 4 and a 5-year-old can have an input around that. And so it's about joint decision making and making plans together. And so coming together as your family and saying, this is the beginning of the school year, let's talk about how we want things to flow. What time do we need to get up in the morning? And, what do you need from me? How are we going to communicate, for paperwork around, that comes home from school? Anything that has been a hot spot in the past for you, you tackle it as a family.
And that will evolve over a few weeks. Like you said, maybe up until Thanksgiving, you won't have things ironed out. But as you end the first week or the second week, you start to realize that there are issues or things that you need to overcome and work on to smooth out.
Yeah. So this is another core point that I want parents to know, that rather than thinking about situations as being a kid that's misbehaving that needs to be corrected, we're switching the frame on that and saying, well, how about if we see it as something that's not working in the family, and if we put our heads together, we can find a better solution. And that really changes the way you come at life. So you try a solution for 1 week. So someone came up with some great idea of how about we hang up our bags on the hooks when we come in from school, and that'll keep the foyer clean. You go, great, does everyone agree? Let's try that for a week. And at the next family meeting, you say, actually, only about 3 out of 7 days was the front hall clear. We're still not there yet. Is there some other thing that we need to, some other approach that we need to take, or a way to make things better? And we can also ask our kids for consequences. What should I do when I see that we've agreed to hang the bags on the hooks when we come in the foyer to keep the hall clear, but people don't? What should we do then? You know, what should we do if you don't get up in time for the bus and you miss it? What should happen then? Right. So when you invite kids into making the consequences for their action, they're not so upset when you follow through on it. And most interestingly, because they kind of know what the consequence is and they came up with it, you almost never even have to do it.
Right.
If they have buy-in, and I would agree, back to school parents, if your kid misses the bus, the consequence is you missed your ride. Mm-hmm. If you say, oh, you missed the bus, I'll drive you, and oh, you slept in, so let's go through the drive-through and I'll get you a breakfast sandwich. I don't know a kid who's going to be too motivated to take the bus when they can have the limousine service with the hot meal served.
Yeah.
So they have to experience the consequences of their choices if we want them to make different decisions in the future. Yeah. So your kids are always learning. They learn from what you do, not from what you say.
Yeah. And I think I've said this before, but years ago saw somebody in my community, he was driving down the road, had his four-ways on, it was snowing, and I thought, I wonder what's wrong. And as I got closer and slower, I realized his son was walking to school in front of his truck. Not yet old enough to probably walk on his own and that far, but he was following behind him with his flashers on. And it was that proud parent, you know, like a motorcycle, you're waving to a fellow.
You've been there, done that.
I'm like, you go. This is a good moment for us.
It's the teachable moment. The teachable moment.
And I'm quite sure if I run into him, I will ask him, but I'm sure his son probably never missed the bus again. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Again, you learn from the experience, not from the threat of the experience. Yeah. Saying if you don't get on the bus, you'll have to walk is not going to do it. It's going to be the day that they do walk where they go, I am never doing this a second time.
Okay, similar topic, but we have some viewer questions that I want to ask you. My daughter does not wake to an alarm or get out of bed without a fight. Every day starts with the same fight of me trying to wake her, so she won't make us all late for school. I really can't take another year of this. P.S. She is 11 years old. So maybe not the bus, but certainly that morning chaos.
Yeah.
And as a parent, the last thing you want to do in the morning is just lose your mind.
Yeah. And know that you're not going to see...
Get your shoes. Get your shoes. Get in the car.
I'm not going to see you for 8 hours, but our last time together was me screaming my head off. So sit with that all day in your classroom as I feel guilty at work. Yeah. Getting kids up independently, this is one of those take time for training. Kids should be able, at the age of 11, that is an age-appropriate ask, that instead of you waking them up, they should be self-independent with an alarm to meet their true demands, meaning it's their job to go to school. It's their commitment to be punctual, not your commitment to make them punctual. Are you hearing this, parents? Delegate time management back to your kids. And I started with things that were like, I would tell my kids, let me know when you're ready to go to the birthday party and I'll drive you. And then I go, actually, the birthday party's over. And they're like, what? I'm like, what was your party? It was your commitment. I'm not watching your time. Parents take on an incredible amount of keeping kids punctual. And as long as kids know, well, it can't be time to go to school yet. Mom's not at 700 decibels yet, right? Like they learn from, you get angrier and angrier. That's how they know what time it is.
And can we just add a disclaimer there? Because your daughters did not miss several birthday parties throughout school because you went, oh, sorry, you weren't keeping track of the time. It wasn't like you did this throughout their lives.
No, they learned
it was once, right?
Because
and
the same
how
with swim lessons or whatever.
Right.
I'd say, oh, call me when you want to get to swim lessons. It's your commitment. My commitment. My responsibility is to drive you when you're ready. Your responsibility is to be punctual. Get very clear on that.
Yes.
And if they're late, either they, if they're late, they actually, how long is the swim lesson? Or they arrive late and their instructor says, why are you late? And they're like, oh, I don't. If they like their teacher, if they like their swim instructor, or they're embarrassed, they don't want to be the last one walking out and everyone else is looking at them. So anyways, my kids learn very quickly that, I call it Mr. Magoo parenting. The more, again, see, if you're incompetent at watching the time, because that's really my kids were like, she's just going to keep working. Like I'm on my computer doing my emails. They're like, she is not watching the clock. We better do this because Mom is not. I'm like, yeah, doodly-doo, I'm not paying attention. So my kids really pay attention to the time because they know I am not stepping into that domain, right? So that ends all the yelling right there. But my kids had alarm clocks, and really it was a matter of, this is what we call a natural consequence. What happens when you don't get up? Like if you just let life unfold, they wake up late, they rush. Now, I think she's concerned that the other siblings are late.
Right.
So at 11, she's actually old enough to stay home. The other kids could go to school. She could take the other kids to school, and she could say, I don't know, figure it out. I guess you're going on your own.
Right.
But she doesn't have to let the other kids be late because one is not getting up. And interestingly, I'm guessing if the mother steps back and says, that's not my job to assume, that I'm guessing that daughter will end up eliciting help from a sibling. It'll be the sibling who says, I don't want you to be late. Why isn't she up? And mom can just say, I don't know. And it's going to be the sibling who ends up going and waking her up. But I think over time they'll realize this. Nobody is invested in being this support network.
Right.
So kids don't pick up responsibility until you let go of responsibility. And it gets a little sloppy during that transfer. But if you come in and rescue, they're going to stick with their current behavior.
It's never going to end.
It's never going to end. Yeah.
Another question for you. My kids are old enough to be home alone after school until I get home from work. I want them to use that time for doing homework so we can have family time in the evening. How do I enforce this when I am not home?
Well, this is why democratic parenting is such a brilliant approach. Because the truth is, you're coming to the realization here, you can't make kids do anything. You can bribe them and you can punish them and you can do all these things and you might get a short-term solution. But what you're really saying here is, how do I win my child's cooperation? Instead of how do I force them, how do I make them wanna, right? How do I make them wanna do their homework? Because I'm not there. So they have to be willing, cooperative people. So part of that, how you win somebody's cooperation is you have strong relationships. So you have that feeling of closeness so that you don't, you want to hold your end of a relationship. You don't want to irritate somebody that you care about. You don't want to disappoint. You want to work with somebody that you like. This is the same in marriages. It's the same in workplaces. We treat each other well when we like each other.
Right.
So you want to have a strong relationship. You want to have that kind of feeling of belonging. And then you don't want a child to feel demeaned or inferior. We only get along with people that we feel we have this mutual respect. So part of that demeaning comes when we impose rules on kids. So by saying you must is going to be unlikely to win their cooperation. They'll sneak around you. They'll lie. They said they did their homework, or they don't have homework, or they'll sneak. So I don't want them to sneak. I don't want them to defy. I want to work with them. So if you can ask them, well, my solution is if you had your homework out of the way, then we'd have more time for fun. But that's just my idea of a good way for things should go. I would get their input. Like, how else could we solve the problem of trying to have family time and getting homework done? How else might that look? And it might be that the kids have buy-in around, like, okay, well, I'm okay for movie night on Wednesdays, but not every night. Like, I kind of want to play on my GameCube after school or whatever. So if you get a little bit of discussion going and they see that there's some goodwill, that you're like, okay, maybe not every day, or I get it. You want to have a little bit of time on your game. Could we split that up? Could we give it a go? And then I would actually just start having fun. I would just start having fun family time. And those people that got their stuff done can now join the board game, and the ones who didn't have made their own choice.
Right.
And so then I really believe it's like, flies, bees to honey or whatever. If you create a fun family environment, kids are drawn to wanting to engage with the family.
You also might find in having that family meeting or having that discussion that kids want that, they want to just have a little bit of downtime when they get home from school rather than going right into homework. While you want to have the family time, there's also that, I just need a bit of a breather.
Yeah, and they do. Can I tell you, about, I say this to my parents when I do full day workshops. I go, imagine this much learning, and you've done this all day, and now you're going to go home and I'm going to give you homework to start on? Like, don't you all want to just relax and ingest what you've taken? Like, your learning brain is done.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan of homework. I mean, we've got all kinds of research that elementary school children, anyways, that it actually harms their learning. Not even neutral. I mean, that literally harms their learning. We know this. I'm not a fan of homework. It's just a long-standing tradition that we haven't gotten rid of yet. Yeah. So I never got into my kids' homework stuff. I'm like, that's between you and your teacher. I never monitored it. I never, if the teacher brought it up to me that it was a problem, I'd go like, let's talk about it when it's a problem. But my kids always just took responsibility and did it because I didn't get in their face about it.
Yeah. My son was always, he was perfect behavior at school, and that's stressful to be on your best for 8 hours. When you're trying to learn, when you're trying to do all the right things, and then he'd come home and he'd have a meltdown. And so we never could start right into homework just because, he was almost decompressing from a day of perfection.
Yeah. I remember it was when my kids were younger, but the walk home from school was like the worst part of the day. And so I realized that part of it was like a carb crash or whatever. So I would start meeting them with chocolate milk or juice boxes and like a granola bar or something. Like they literally had the hangries. I didn't even believe that was a real thing until my kids were like in school.
Oh, it is real.
And so as soon as
It's real even as an adult.
and the other thing is that my kids were always starving after school. I could not hold back on food. So I had to switch what time dinner was because by the time I'd make a nice dinner and then they were like, they'd hardly eat it. They're like, well, we had this massive after-school snack. It was healthy, but it was still a massive amount because they're starving. So I started moving dinner out. So we just worked to try to, instead of getting mad at them or whatever, he said, this isn't working. What's another solution? How about eating dinner later? Yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? Solving problems in the family meetings.
Can I tell you, from years and years ago of doing the show, you always talked about the happy, snappy goodbye.
Yes.
As being a first day of school. And I had to, when the twins were in JK, I had to do the happy, snappy goodbye. And this year, I had to do it again for grade 12. And it was me that had to be
You're like,
happy.
I need to go.
I know.
My baby's in grade 12.
I'm going to do the happy, snappy. They had no interest.
Yeah.
They were like, we don't need you. See you later.
Oh,
Talk
that was
to you
me
soon.
moving my daughter into her university dorm. I was like all ready to spend the day and decorate the room and hang the lights, and like she immediately made friends on the floor, and it was like, no. This is like a girl's time. This is not a mother-daughter time. I'm like,
thanks for coming.
I want to decorate your room.
I know. It becomes very hard.
Yeah. But the happy, snappy goodbye, the idea behind that is that in Adlerian psychology, which is the premise for democratic parenting, Adlerian psychology has as a unique tenet that you won't find in other theories, that we believe that behavior is goal-directed. It's in order to make something happen. And so a lot of those tears at the door is in order to kind of slow you down and make you hang out. The minute the parent says goodbye, the child actually emotionally regulates themselves and gets engaged in the classroom. And I've been a teacher on the other side. They will cry until you leave. So if you hang out until they stop crying, you're just going to make the misery go longer. So drop them off, even if the teacher has to help, let's go a little remove you from mom's leg. Because as soon as they're in the classroom, then the settling process begins. So go have your cry in the car, but if you wait, I promise you, you're adding more tension to the kid's life, not less.
Yeah.
And your own.
Still, I wanted to be
I'm not
there.
saying it's not easy. I'm telling you what to do. I'm not saying it's easy to do.
Yes.
Let's make that clear.
I'm going to throw one more question in. We just have a few minutes
Okay.
left. I know Alyson encourages parents to teach their kids who to make their own lunches, and I would love to not have to do this anymore, but I'm afraid if I left it to their own choosing, my kids would either skip lunch altogether or just eat a granola bar.
So there again is a very specific example of how we hold on to responsibility because we have these demands of how it should look and we like it our way. And we feel like we're being negligent if we're not feeding our child properly. So we don't want to delegate this responsibility. I would suggest that unless you have a true nutrition problem with your child, this is one meal a day. Even if you're packing healthy food, are they actually eating it anyways? You hear lunch boxes come home and they're mostly untouched, or they've doled it out to their friends and they've traded it for the kid who's got the better lunch. This is not your top one burning problem. So they're not going to have optimal health, but the benefit of giving them that responsibility, taking it off your plate, they will learn proper nutrition from a million other ways that you cook and serve and model, and they'll get better as they get older. You got to play the long game here. Nobody is dying of vitamin C deficiency because of their lunch
in grade 4.
Yeah. So you've got lots of other ways to imprint good habits. I think it's more important to pass off the lunch.
And in September, you have nice bento boxes and perfect lunches. And in June, you have croutons.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
And an old apple.
Yeah.
The one that was in the lunchbox
Actually, you start
from the
giving
day
them
before.
money. You start giving them money and say, yeah, just pizza lunch, do it. Fine.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I think, these are great tips while we are talking about this being an actual back to school. This routine will happen throughout the year. And I know, we mentioned just the beginning of the school year, but as you go off to the holiday break in December, you come back, when you start a new semester for kids that are older, all of these tips and tricks and kind of going back to the family meetings and going back to the reset and scheduling will just evolve over the years.
Yeah. I think you need a really good communication center. So just for organization, I know now so much stuff is digital, it's true. But if you just have a family calendar where you have the agenda for the family meeting, you have a press board where you can hang up whatever the schedules are for ballet and soccer, and an inbox for the forums or the agendas, the things that the parents have to pay attention to, and you train your kids when you come in. You got to go to the communication center, unload those materials to keep things updated, and you just start working on the after-school routine. That might take you three weeks. The getting up and getting out the door on time, that might take you 3 weeks. But if you stick with it and you keep being consistent and you do the consequences and you follow through with those and you keep tweaking it at the family meetings, you will chip away bit by bit at these hot spots that cause conflict in the family. Just stick with it. Don't give up too early.
You mentioned at the beginning of the show that we have lots of shows. We've done this topic before. Where can people find information?
Well, information for our show is, on our Rogers YouTube channel.
Yes.
So back episodes are there, and those are searchable.
And as well, on your website, you have a wealth of information and topics, all broken down by topic.
Yep, I have a good search engine, and I've got blogs and videos and a whole resource page with book suggestions. And of course, I have launched during the pandemic my parenting podcast called Parenting the Adlerian Way, which was just ranked #1 in Canada in the parenting category.
Well, look at that.
How about that? Yeah.
Officially, congratulations.
Thank you. Very proud.
Yes.
And of course, all the content in my
And
books, which are
that
still
is-
available, and you can get those through my website or any major bookseller.
I have to say that is well deserved because I've sat, I've been through JK with you all the way to grade 12. This journey has been doable. Thanks in part to you.
You beat me to the children getting married, though. So now the tables are turned. You're the expert there. You're still the expert on twins. We've been on this journey together.
I wouldn't say expert, just been on the journey.
Hey, we're still alive.
Just scraping through some days. Thank you.
Thank you
for being here, for offering so much advice to everyone at home. And thank you at home for watching us on the Parenting Show. We love being able to talk about different issues that are affecting everyone, to let you know that you are not alone when you are going through this journey. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time on the Parenting Show.